What if I told you the financial architecture that's ruled the world for 80 years is being quietly dismantled right now, not through war or revolution, but through lines of code settling transactions in under 5 seconds? If this is your first time here, I break down institutional-grade crypto opportunities with data-driven analysis that actually matters for long-term wealth building. Smash that like button if you want more content like this, hit subscribe, and drop a comment, because what I'm about to show you might completely reshape your investment thesis. Since 1944, when diplomats gathered at Bretton Woods to architect the post-war financial order, the United States dollar has reigned supreme as the world's reserve currency. The International Monetary Fund and World Bank emerged as gatekeepers, controlling which nations access capital and dictating the terms through structural adjustment programs that critics argue benefited Western creditors far more than local populations. For decades, this system functioned with brutal efficiency. Even when Brazil wanted to trade with India, their money flowed through correspondent banking channels in New York, converted into dollars, locked up in nostril accounts that tied up trillions in working capital. Think about how insane that actually is, a bilateral trade between two sovereign nations outside America requiring Manhattan's permission. Here's where it gets interesting. That stranglehold is disintegrating faster than anyone in Washington anticipated. In the first quarter of 2025, the dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves collapsed to 58%, the lowest level recorded in over 2 decades. Meanwhile, emerging market central banks have doubled their gold holdings over the past 10 years, now commanding 9% of total reserves. Translation? The world is frantically constructing exit ramps from the dollar highway, and the infrastructure they're building runs on blockchain technology. Let me paint you a vivid picture of why this transformation matters. Remember when Russian banks got severed from SWIFT after the Ukraine invasion in 2022? That wasn't merely an economic sanction, it was a demonstration of raw financial power that reverberated through every developing nation watching from the sidelines. Leaders from Jakarta to Nairobi suddenly realized if geopolitical currents shift the wrong direction, their entire economy could be frozen overnight, regardless of whether they committed any offense. That existential fear became the catalyst for what's unfolding today. Enter the BRICS coalition: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, recently expanded to include Nigeria, Egypt, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Argentina, and Iran, representing 45% of humanity and commanding 35% of global GDP. At their 17th summit in Johannesburg during August 2025, they didn't just voice grievances about Western dominance. They unveiled BRICS Pay, a blockchain-enabled payment network engineered to handle up to 20,000 messages per second with no mandatory transaction fees. This isn't political theater or some finance minister's pipe dream. Pilot projects connecting Russia's SPFS messaging system to China's CIPS, India's UPI, and Brazil's Pix have already processed hundreds of millions in local currency trade settlements. Early institutional research indicates transaction costs could plummet by 90% compared to traditional correspondent banking. Now pay close attention, because this is where blockchain technology stops being crypto jargon and becomes the rails reshaping global power dynamics. China's cross-border interbank payment system processed 175.49 trillion yuan across 8.2 million transactions in 2024 alone, a year-over-year surge of 42.6% in value, 24% in volume. By mid-2025, SIPs span 189 countries with 176 direct participants and 1,514 indirect participants, 73% of which are Asian institutions. This isn't theoretical anymore. This is operational infrastructure actively routing capital flows outside Western control, bypassing the dollar entirely. But wait until you hear the biggest risk traditional finance faces. Neutral blockchain protocols are emerging as the connective tissue between these competing systems. 3 networks in particular, XRP, Stellar, and Hedera, have positioned themselves not as speculative gambling tokens, but as institutional-grade settlement infrastructure capable of bridging East and West through trust-minimized programmable rails. And you guys, I have a special trick for you which nobody seems to be using, and I cannot wrap my head around why. Because if you sign up through my link down in the description onto the BuyDefi exchange, you get a 10% deposit bonus. And now stay with me here. Now, here comes the important part. If you have any trading capital on any other exchange and you move it to your newly created BuyDefi account, you get on top of your capital. You moved another 10% extra trading capital. As an example, if you move or deposit $10,000 to your account, you get a $1,000 for free. And here is why this is possible. BuyDefi makes money on trading fees. The more capital you have, the more you trade. The more you trade, the more they earn. So they're literally investing in your trading activity by giving you extra capital up front. And unlike other platforms where bonuses are in the 1 to 3% range, BuyDefi's bonus is a full 10%. I am not kidding. I really don't understand why nobody is doing this. To me, it really seems like people sometimes are too lazy or just don't like free money. I kindly ask you to pause this video and take your time to make an account. You can thank me later in the description of this video. Alright, let's jump back into the video. Let me break down why Ripple's XRP has become the institutional favorite among treasury departments worldwide. The XRP ledger achieves transaction finality in 3 to 5 seconds at an average cost of 0.000012 XRP, roughly $0.0004 at prevailing exchange rates, compared to correspondent banking fees ranging from $15 to $50 per cross-border transfer. In the second quarter of 2025, institutional flows on the XRP ledger approached $1.3 trillion, facilitated through partnerships with JP Morgan, Santander, and PayPal, leveraging the ledger's escrow-based model. And here's the kicker that shocked even seasoned institutional investors. In March 2025, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission reclassified XRP as a commodity rather than a security, providing the regulatory clarity that cleared the path for explosive institutional adoption. BRIC central banks have explicitly cited the XRP ledger's programmable settlement features for potential trade finance platforms. Ripple's on-demand liquidity service has onboarded over 300 financial institutions across 45 countries, with 40 members actively utilizing XRP for ODL corridors. Between 2021 and 2025, Ripple processed over $15 billion in cross-border settlements across 35 corridors, with average end-to-end latency of 4 seconds. In 2024, ODL volumes reached $15 billion, a 32% year-over-year increase driven by high traffic corridors in Asia Pacific, especially between Japan and the Philippines. According to institutional research from Santander's Treasury Operations, their OnePayFX service processed more than 200 million transactions annually and reported a 40% increase in transaction volume on Ripple-based corridors between Europe and Latin America in the first quarter of 2025. The cost per transaction averages 0.00000012 XRP compared to traditional systems that can take 2 to 5 business days for settlement. Now here's where the story gets personal, and this might blow your mind. Stellar takes the opposite approach. Instead of serving banks at the institutional layer, it's building financial rails for the people those banks systematically ignored. The network charges transaction fees of 0.000001 XLM, making micropayments economically viable for the first time in human history. Through IBM's WorldWire integration, pilot corridors connecting African and Asian fintechs processed over $50 million in remittances in September 2025, reducing settlement times from days to seconds and slashing costs by more than 70% versus traditional money transfer operators. Hear me out on this data. In the first half of 2025, Stellar sustained 1.5 to 2.5 million daily transactions at average fees of $0.000015, handling tokenized volumes exceeding $757 million from projects including Societe Generale Forge's EUR Convertible and Ondo Finance's USDY. Stellar's anchor network now exceeds 500 entities across 50 jurisdictions, enabling remittance corridors in Latin America, Africa, and Asia, where average fees under legacy systems approach 8%. One corporate deployment reduced project salary disbursement fees by $453,000 monthly. Imagine what that means for workers actually receiving their hard-earned money instead of feeding parasitic middlemen. The network has processed over 1.2 billion transactions since inception, with median transaction fees below $0.00001 and 99th percentile settlement times under 6 seconds. Stellar's partnership with MoneyGram enables users to deposit local fiat, mint USDC on Stellar, transfer funds internationally, and cash out at more than 300,000 outlets worldwide. USDC on Stellar has become a preferred settlement asset due to its price stability and regulatory clarity, with over $10 billion in USDC reserves held on the network as of mid-2025. Circle's cross-chain transfer protocol enables seamless movement of USDC between Stellar and Ethereum, further enhancing Stellar's role as a hub in a multi-chain settlement ecosystem. The network's decentralized exchange allows atomic conversions between any two on-chain assets, enabling direct currency-to-currency trades such as Brazilian reals for Indian rupees without intermediary dollar conversions. Hedera Hashgraph represents a third paradigm entirely enterprise-grade performance through directed acyclic graph architecture. With throughput exceeding 10,000 transactions per second and sub-second finality, Hedera rivals centralized payment systems on raw performance metrics. Its governing council includes Google, IBM, Boeing, Deutsche Telekom, and multiple international banks, providing institutional credibility that underwrites network stability and regulatory compliance. Transaction fees on Hedera average $0.0001 per operation, making micro-settlement use cases economically viable. In mid-2025, the Central Bank of the United Arab Emirates piloted a programmable dirham CBDC on Hedera, processing $100 million in tokenized currency over 3 months without significant downtime. This pilot demonstrated the network's capability for atomic settlement and smart contract functionality in a permissioned environment. Since opening to public token issuance in 2021, Hedera's token service has hosted over 8,500 unique token projects, from stablecoins to tokenized real estate shares. Enterprises such as Standard Bank have used Hedera to prototype cross-border trade finance corridors, embedding Know Your Customer attestations into the initial issuance of letters of credit, thereby eliminating days of manual due diligence. This changes everything when you zoom out to see the institutional momentum building. The World Bank Group's September 2025 deployment of FundsChain, a blockchain tracking tool for monitoring disbursements across 250 active development projects, marked a watershed moment. Built on Hyperledger Basu, FundsChain records commitments, disbursements, and beneficiary confirmations on a permission network spanning 10 countries and 13 pilot projects, establishing an immutable audit trail with automated compliance checks. This moved blockchain from pilot stage to production-grade infrastructure within multilateral finance. What in the world? Even Swift, the 11,000 bank messaging network facilitating over $150 trillion in annual transactions, has begun testing blockchain interoperability modules with both XRP Ledger and Hedera Hashgraph. These proofs of concept aim to embed distributed ledger technology into ISO 20022 compliant messaging workflows, enabling real-time settlement alongside legacy payment instructions. Initial tests with Ripple's on-demand liquidity demonstrated the feasibility of sourcing pre-funded XRP pools to bridge fiat corridors on demand, reducing pre-funding requirements for banks by up to 30% in preliminary simulations. Now, here's the twist nobody saw coming. Industry insiders report that Circle's cross-border payments network, leveraging USD Coin as a programmable medium of exchange, achieved $150 billion in settlement volume across corridors linking Europe, Asia, and the Middle East by May 2025. Federal Reserve data indicates that the new development bank BRICS's alternative to traditional multilateral institutions has consolidated its position with $40 billion in approved financing across 122 strategic initiatives since inception. As of mid-2025, the NDB approved over $40 billion in financing for 122 projects, including renewable energy plants and transportation corridors, while maintaining a AAA credit rating from major agencies, an achievement analysts regard as validation of its governance model. Central bank pilot programs demonstrate the viability of tokenized settlement infrastructure. The Bank for International Settlements Project Enbridge successfully executed prototype wholesale CBDC transactions across national DLT networks. After completing a prototype in 2024, Enbridge reached minimum viable product stage by August 2024, connecting 5 CBDCs via a shared distributed ledger. In a June 2025 pilot, transfers totaling over $250 million were executed between pilot central banks with settlement finality under 3 seconds. The system's governance model, a decentralized autonomous organization of central banks, ensures that no single member can unilaterally alter settlement rules. Our analysis of regulatory filings shows that the European Union's Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation, approved in June 2025, creates a unified legal framework for crypto asset service providers and establishes asset reference tokens and e-money tokens as recognized forms of money, placing public blockchains at the heart of regulated financial infrastructure. Singapore's Payment Services Act grants licensing to digital payment token service providers while recognizing tokenized claims as designated payment tokens. That just happened. The convergence of BRICS-led payment rails and decentralized blockchain protocols is eroding the post-war, dollar-centric financial architecture that has prevailed for 8 decades. State actors pursue sovereign payment infrastructures, while private networks such as XRP, Stellar, and Hedera provide neutral, programmable settlement layers. Think about this. The maturation of interoperable, open-source settlement protocols may ultimately underpin a more fragmented yet resilient global financial architecture. The technological infrastructure being built today will shape international economic relationships for decades to come. Blockchain-based payment networks offer the potential for more inclusive, efficient, and resilient global financial infrastructure. For everyone watching this transformation unfold, the narrative transcends price speculation entirely. Ripple, Stellar, and Hedera represent foundational infrastructure for a world where no single power dictates the future of value transfer. Whether examining central bank corridors or remittance flows from migrant workers, these networks embody the possibility that multipolarity will be expressed through both state decisions and individual financial choices. I did not see that coming when I started researching this topic. The sheer velocity at which neutral blockchain protocols have evolved from fringe technology to infrastructure discussions at central banks worldwide is staggering. When I examine the Filipino nurse in Dubai sending money home in 5 seconds through Stellar's rails, or the Brazilian exporter settling trade with an Indian manufacturer using XRP without touching dollars, I'm witnessing financial sovereignty being rebuilt from the bottom up. As geopolitical multipolarity intensifies, adoption metrics, transaction efficiency, and ecosystem diversity will determine which networks become foundational pillars of the new financial order. The remarkable part? You're witnessing this transformation in real time, not reading about it in history books decades later, but watching the architecture of tomorrow's money being assembled piece by piece, transaction by transaction, second by second. This is your moment to understand what's happening beneath the noise. Smash that like button if this breakdown opened your eyes to the rails being constructed for tomorrow's financial system. Subscribe so you're positioned ahead of the mainstream narrative that's still debating whether crypto is legitimate. And drop a comment below with your honest perspective. Do you believe XRP, Stellar, and Hedera will actually power the multipolar financial architecture? Or are we watching another overhyped narrative that fizzles out? Let's debate it in the comments, because the infrastructure decisions being made right now will determine how value moves across borders for the next generation. And you deserve to be part of that conversation.